Russian West, a Western short story. Written by XAX4Games. Enjoy. A dry breeze blows across the barren landscape. A figure makes its way through this deprived desert, their lips as cracked as the ground they walk on, their clothes worn by the highly risen sun, and their skin badly lashed by the heat. The figure wore a well-worn, brown leather jacket with a plain black pair of boots with spurs, also well-worn. They also had an iconic cowboy hat with fired shells wrapped around its base. The figure stood strongly, fearlessly, their perseverance leading them beyond the horizon to salvation. The figure walked until they eventually climbed over a large sand dune to see a small, worn-down town. A wash of relief flowed over them when they processed what they saw in front of them. It looked to be abandoned, but the figure could not but hope that it wasn't. They began their final push towards hope as they moved towards the town. Once the figure got to the entrance of the town, they read the name of the place. Although faded, they could make out what it said. Dilberry. The figure began to walk down the main street, looking for any life just to make sure that it wasn't a ghost town he stumbled upon. And after a couple minutes of wandering, they then saw one live building, the saloon. As the figure approached the saloon, the music, shouting, and singing got louder and louder. The figure opened the doors and all the noise stopped immediately, heads turned, drinks were settled, and all the attention was on the guy who just interrupted the live partygoers. The man didn't acknowledge the eyes peering down on him, and he proceeded to go to a stool and sit down.
"Water will do,"
the man said with a Russian accent. The bartender wasted no time grabbing a glass, filling it with water, and then handing it to the man. A guy with a new, full cowboy attire sitting from the other side of the saloon put his drink down and smirked at the man. He stood up and began approaching the newfound party stopper. The cowboy grabbed a stool next to the Russian and took a seat. "Where you from, stranger?" the cowboy said with a forced Western accent.
"Northern Russia."
the man said coldly.
"You?"
The cowboy looked dumbfounded. "Isn't it obvious? I'm from the West and only the West. I'm a rootin' tootin' cowboy. Name's Drayson Goldweather, and I'm the finest cowboy you'll ever meet." The man began to chuckle.
"True cowboys don't have to force an accent. It should come naturally."
Drayson's face began getting red with frustration. "You better take that back, smart mouth, or I'll blow your brains out," he screamed with anger as he bolted up from his stool and went for his gun. Before Drayson could draw his gun from its holster, the Russian already drew his and pointed right between Drayson's eyes.
"Now tell me, kid," he began. "Are you still willing to draw that little six-shooter of yours?"
Drayson backed down and slowly put his hands up, his face filled with fear and regret as he stopped his fake accent. "Just who the hell are you?" The Russian looked up and looked Drayson straight in the eyes with a cold, dead stare.
"Name's Sikorsky, and that finishes our exchange."
Sikorsky lowered his gun and returned it to its holster.
"You new to the West?"
he asked Drayson, returning to his water glass. "Yeah," Drayson said in a sad and ashamed tone. Sikorsky began to laugh.
"Ha! So you were a fake. Nothing makes me angrier than a man who likes to play pretend."
Sikorsky's smile quickly turned to a frown. Drayson gulped and sat back down, requesting a drink from the bartender. The bartender nods his head and grabs a shot glass, pouring Drayson a bit of liquor. "No, that's not what I meant," Drayson snarled. "I meant a drink of water, don't want to get too dehydrated." The bartender sighed, passing the shot down the counter to a man so drunk he was barely even conscious. The bartender then fills a glass of water as per the impolite request and hands it to the exposed newbie. The two quietly drink together as the party slowly begins to resume to its former peak. The pair finish their drinks, pay their tabs, and leave the crowded saloon. As the two were leaving, Sikorsky purchased a water canteen to go. "What are we going to do now?" Drayson asked.
We?
Sikorsky questioned.
Who said anything about we? No, this is just me.
"Well, I just was thinking that we were going together. I mean, I'm clearly fresh to the West and I want to learn how to survive out in a devilish place like this." Sikorsky sighed.
Fine, but you will do what I tell you to do, that's the one rule.
Drayson grew a grin that therefore turned into a smile of short-lived success. "But wait, you didn't answer my question. What are we doing now?"
Getting horses. We will need them to cross the desert alive.
"Wait." Drayson paused. "Then doesn't that mean you already have a horse?"
Had a horse is the correct term. It got shot and died while I was traveling.
Drayson looked ahead. "Sorry to hear about that." Sikorsky accepted the apology and looked towards the local horse stables. The two men entered the stable owner's office, activating the doorbell. "Ah," began the stable owner, "nice to meet you fine fellows. My name is Caden Willert, and I'm the owner of this fine establishment. What can I do for you?"
We would like to purchase 2 horses.
Sikorsky ordered in a friendly manner. "All right." Caden began, "We have 4 Mustangs, a quarter horse, and 2 Arabians." "I will take a Mustang," Drayson said. "Hopefully not too expensive. I'm almost broke after that party," Drayson murmured under his breath.
I would like to see the horses myself,
said Sikorsky. "Right this way," Caden said cheerfully, excited that he finally had some customers. Once they got to the stables, Sikorsky began examining the horses while Drayson and Caden walked back inside to sign papers for Drayson's soon-to-be-purchased horse. While they were inside, Sikorsky picked his horse and found Drayson's. Sikorsky then went and grabbed 2 saddles and 2 halters, letting the horses out by picking the locks with a fork he picked up from the saloon. By the time Sikorsky finished putting the saddle and halter on, Drayson and Caden walked back out, wondering what all the clatter was in the stable yard. "What are you doing?" Caden yelled in confusion. Sikorsky didn't respond and instead leaped onto the horse and began to speed away. "No!" Caden screamed, running back inside to grab his 12-gauge from behind the main counter. Caden ran back outside in a stumble, falling down while doing so. When he finally got back to his feet, he saw that Drayson had hopped on his saddled horse and also rode off. "You!" Caden screeched, firing a few bad shots at the 2 criminals. "I'll get you for this." As the pair of fresh bandits began heading further west with their stolen horses, Sikorsky fired a shot back towards Caden and dinged the doorbell at the front entrance of the stable house.
You caught on quick, kid.
Sikorsky paused, returning his gun back to its holster.
Good thing you didn't pay.
"Yeah, when you said you wanted to see the horses yourself, I thought you were up to something. Sikorsky smirked, looking outwards towards the horizon and the events to come. "You know," Drayson began, "you never told me why you're out here."
Reasons like everyone else.
"And that is?"
New opportunities.
The men continued on their journey west, crossing over sand dunes and passing tumbleweeds. Eventually the sun set, and the pair needed to find shelter for the night. Thankfully, the two men spotted a ravine not too far ahead. "Well, that's convenient, ain't it?" Drayson remarked. "It could also be a shortcut, right?" Sikorsky hummed. They began to make their way to the base of the ravine to set up camp, unknowingly walking into a trap. Sikorsky and Drayson dismounted their horses and began to gather some sticks from some dead bush in the surrounding area. "Will this really be enough to start a fire?" Drayson asked.
"Yes, it won't take much to start. We will just need to add more later."
As they maintained the fire, two men riding horses loomed from both sides of the top of the ravine. The watching onlookers faced each other and nodded, beginning their descent down the ravine by taking two slim passages alongside the ravine's walls. While the pressures made their way towards Sikorsky and Drayson, who were still maintaining the fire, they drew their guns. The shorter one had a .55 caliber Magnum in his holster. The man himself was slimly built, had medium longish brown hair, and wore a black leather jacket with black spurs. The taller one had a carbine rifle strapped on his back. He was slightly more built than the shorter man, and his hair was much longer as well. While the two hunters were approaching, Drayson was left behind to maintain the fire while Sikorsky went to go feed the horses. It was silent until a faint stomping of horseshoes came to Sikorsky's ears.
"Drayson."
"Yeah."
"Snuff that fire."
"Why?"
"Just do it."
Sikorsky shouted. Drayson snuffed the fire with his boots and went under the cover of the rocks. The two waited for a few minutes before Sikorsky decided to begin readying his horse. "What is it?" Drayson asked.
"They're staking us out. They're clearly quite skilled. Get ready to go at a moment's notice."
"All right," Drayson replied, deciding not to press further as he then began to ready his horse for a quick escape. When the morning came, Drayson looked up the wall of the ravine and saw the outline of a man resting on a slim passage of the wall. "Found them," Drayson whispered to Sikorsky. Sikorsky nodded his head in understanding, getting his horse to stand up, mounting it afterwards and preparing to charge the enemy. Drayson, seeing this, follows and gets ready to charge and fight. And just like that, they darted out of their cover, drew their guns, and aimed towards the high passage, firing at their enemies' positions. The men waiting on the overpass were startled by this sudden attack. "Damn it!" the shorter one shouted. "Don't worry, we can still get 'em," the taller one shouted back. Sikorsky flinched. He thought he had heard those voices before, but he wasn't sure. The two hunters shot up and raced towards their horses, mounting them and procuring their prey. As the chase progressed, more shots were fired from both sides. The hunter with the Magnum caught up with Drayson and Sikorsky and fired wildly at them, nearly hitting them several times. The hunter with the rifle played it more safely, staying farther away and doing his best to level out his scope and land a successful shot off. Sikorsky knew that they were at a huge disadvantage.
They not only have a high ground advantage, but they also have a sharpshooter.
Sikorsky thought to himself,
"We need to even the playing field if we want to live."
The firefight continued, neither side being able to land a hit on the other side. But they all knew that this could all change when they all exit the ravine. "We gotta get 'em before they exit the ravine, otherwise they'll get away," shouted the shorter guy. "I know," shouted the taller guy, "that's why we need to land our shots." At that moment, Sikorsky finally remembered who the hunters were.
"I know who they are."
Sikorsky hollered over the wind.
"They're the Aiden brothers."
Drayson looked at him in confusion. The who now?
Aiden brothers, they are the ones that chased me from Russia to the States. They're also the ones that shot my horse.
Drayson now realized the true heat of the situation. If these guys were able to chase out a guy like Sikorsky, then we are in real trouble, Drayson thought to himself. The fight continued, shots missing by the grit of the teeth. Eventually, on his second shot, the taller Aiden made contact, hitting Drayson in the calf. Ah! Drayson screamed in pain, falling off his horse and hitting a rock, knocking him out cold.
Damn it.
Sikorsky muttered. Sikorsky quickly made the decision to turn around and get Drayson before anything bad could happen. When Sikorsky turned around, it threw the Aiden brothers off. After all, the Aiden brothers couldn't turn around quickly due to being on a slim passageway. When Sikorsky reached Drayson, he yanked him up onto his horse and hit the back of it to get it moving. Drayson's horse darted off towards the ravine's exit with Drayson laying on its back. The Aiden brothers ignored Drayson, knowing he was knocked out cold. "All on your own now," yelled the taller Aiden. Sikorsky didn't bother responding because he knew that it would only slow him down, even if by only a little bit. Sikorsky dug his spurs into his horse and steered it back around towards the exit of the ravine. The Aiden brothers continued their assault, firing shot after shot at the fleeing man. After another 30 seconds of gunfire, Sikorsky and the Aiden brothers exited the ravine, finally seeing each other at the same level. Drayson laid on the ground still unconscious, his horse laying next to him. "Well, how about that?" the shorter Aiden said, getting off his horse with an impressed look on his face. "You dodge and weave pretty good."
"Yeah,"
said Sikorsky, also dismounting.
"I guess so."
"Well, I have a proposition for you, good friend," the shorter Aiden began. "I challenge you to a duel. If you survive the duel, then you and your companion can live and we will stop pursuing you. But if you don't, well, there won't be much you can do if you're dead, haha." Sikorsky nodded his head in agreement, and the two men got ready for the other to make a move. The two stared each other down, the tension so powerful you could feel it run through your entire body. Soon after they began their showdown, the two quick draws drew, and their shots grazed each other, sending them off their original path. There was a long moment of silence. Then, at the exact same time, both of them fell to their knees. Both Sikorsky and Aiden grabbed their left shoulders in pain. Looks like we had the same idea," said the short Aiden. "Great minds think alike, I guess." Sikorsky didn't respond, nor did he grin. He remained serious and got to his feet. "Well," the taller Aiden began, "looks like you live, but you won't if we don't get you stitched up. And if we let you die of blood loss, that would not only go against our deal, but it would also disrespect our pride as both men and cowboys." The taller Aiden got off his horse and grabbed some medical supplies from a pouch on his horse's side. He then began removing the bullets from both Sikorsky's and Aiden's shoulders, stitching the wounds afterwards. "Well, we won't be coming for ya anymore as part of our agreement," said the shorter Aiden, "so off we go, take care." Sikorsky watched as the brothers left over the horizon, staying by Drayson until he woke up, so the two could continue their journey to salvation. The end. Thank you for listening in on the project I have been working on. Please tell me if you liked it in the comments below.